Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. And welcome back to Solo RPG Friday. And today we are going to be taking a look at some new to me Mork Borg supplements. Over the last year or so, I have grown to realize that my Mork Borg hobby has actually split into two separate but equal hobbies. Two hobbies that I get the same fulfillment out of, even though they are very different. And one of those hobbies is playing Mork Borg, and the other hobby is collecting and reading Mork Borg supplements and books. I am a book collector in general and a book reader, but I firmly believe that those are two actually very different hobbies. I enjoy buying and collecting books just as much as I enjoy reading them, sometimes more even. And I think the same can go with RPG books. And it was kind of like what Deborah and I were talking about when I had the conversation with her Geek Gamers. And she writes in her book, her solo GM book, that everything is playing. So if you're like me, you've probably read 20 times more RPG books than you have actually played, and that is perfectly fine. It's a fine hobby in and of itself. So we're going to take a look at a few Mork Borg supplements that I have received over the last few months. And there are quite a few more that I have received, and we'll take a look at those in another video. The first one here is Icon. This is the newest one that I have received here. And this is a nice little box set here. And this says, Ancient God Vessels of Cured Skin and Soot Black Wood, as rare and as valuable as they are blasphemous. The old Galkenbeckian priestess claim Necrubal's left hand carved the icons with a knife. Press and earth-shattering hammer strikes. Stories, myths, and promises of harbored gifts and curses are carved into the rocks and monoliths dotting the dying earth. The two-headed basilisks detest them, according to church belief, wielding the powers to unfetter the profane, profound, bound within a serious desecration. Crows are sent hunting for heretics. They find the icons. They tattle and tell. Icon wielders burn. So this was actually written by Pelle Nelson and released by Stockholm Cartel. So this is kind of like an official supplement, not a third-party supplement. And this is pretty interesting. So this says that there are 4 profane, profound, age-old, and nigh-forgotten folk gods shackled within. When wielded, pick a random tract or roll a d4 to determine which is summoned. Roll a d8 determining their purpose, +1 for every willing human sacrifice. The sacrificed must agree to be slain. You may also add +1 for each significant body part severed from the wielder of the icon. The modifier can never exceed +3. Omens cannot be used to change this roll. So once you summon one of the 4 profane, profound, you are locked into their gift. You cannot request aid again until the effect concludes. Some effects are instantaneous. Now, one of the joys of this small supplement is in its surprise. So I'm not going to spoil too much, but we will roll up a couple random encounters with the icons. So this supplement comes with 4 pamphlets here, and each one of these represents one of the profane, profound. And we'll just take a look at those individually right here. We have the Silk Fiend. We have the Old Dead. We have the Becklure. And we have the Bilk Herd. So let's do a randomization here. We'll draw one. We'll take that one there. And then let's roll a d8. Let's say we have not performed a human sacrifice and we are not willing to sever a limb right now. So we'll roll a d8 and an 8. Okay, so now we turn to passage 8 to see what kind of gift we get from the Bilk Herd. Too generous and kind to the insignificant and mortal, Far too often, presently vindictive and cruel, his misguided revenge sometimes punishes his flock. Death and gifts go hand in hand. So let's see what we would get from the bilk herd if we rolled an 8. The herder offers a handful of green shoots to be eaten from his hoary palm. His gracious offering heals D6 HP to all who graze from his hand. That's pretty cool. These profane, profound, I get a really strong kind of Kingdom Death monster from these encounters here. And now let's do one more, and then we'll save the rest for the surprise if you end up buying this. And for me, if I ended up using this in a game. So who do we have here? We have the Silk Fiend. In myths and heresy, carved on rock and slab, it's alleged Necrobol, in a fit of itching frenzy, shredded his skin and organs, scattering his severed limbs across the world. Through ritual or misery, these parts attained unholy life, sprouting detestable limbs, crawling into penetralia. The Silk Fiend, still penetrated in whispers, is known to be part of Necrobol's aberrant right arm. All right, so let's say we sever our right arm before summoning the Silk Fiend. So we can add a +1 for this here. And a 6. Okay, so let's turn to passage 6 here. 6, and the Silk Fiend says, "Hush now, you are safe, enveloped in soft silk. Test toughness at DR 14. So you would take your D20, and depending on what your toughness was, let's say my toughness was 3. If I hit a 14, I rolled a 15. So yes, to receive the Silk Fiend's web blessing and armor at D8 tier, no penalties for D6 days. So hey, you gain some really great armor for D6 days. For only for 1 day, but you might want to rush off to kill something big because you're protected by the Silk Fiend's armor. Yeah, very cool. These are really neat. I like these a lot. I like this little box. I'm a sucker for little boxes like this, so very nice. Okay, so the next supplement we'll take a look at here is called Suffering Extended. I want to grab the core Mork book real quick. Okay, so Suffering Extended actually extends or expands the character creation rules from Mork Borg. So it basically adds a whole bunch of new charts that you can roll on while you are creating your scum, and all of the different things that you can roll on, such as the random items or the random weapons, and just all of the random things that you can get. Suffering Extended adds to that. This I purchased, I think, on Itch, and I just printed out my own black and white copy here. So Suffering Extended, these are alternate rules and extended content by Michael Gorkowski. So here we have alternate starting equipment. So we have a D12 2d6 roll for some alternate starting equipment that you can have when you create your character. We have D6 rations that you can find. The ill-prepared, we have during your journeys you aid yourself with. We have a D66 roll of like some travel gear and travel equipment there. Along the way you find, so you can find some D66 things. Let's go with the yellow die will be the column here. So we'll go to 25. So 2, 5 here. We find 30 feet of rope. And maybe here we have during your journey, you aid yourself with, let's go 1, 5 here. So 1, 5, D4 red poison vials. It's a toughness DR12 check or D10 damage. Hey, that's pretty great to find some poison to use. And then here we have a strange horse indeed. A strange horse indeed. Sword broken, shield shattered, but the victory is far from decided. There is hardly anything more dangerous than a cornered animal down on its knees and with nothing to lose. Unarmed, unchained. Use instead of the default unarmed D2 damage. So this gives you some alternate ways to go unarmed combat. We also have an extended weapon list. So roll a D66 or a D46 if you start with the scroll. So if you start with the scroll, you have a chance of getting a less powerful weapon. If you don't start with the scroll, you have a better chance of getting a more powerful weapon. So this is just a whole bunch of new weapons that you can start your game with. D8 minor artifacts. There's the Zweihander. Extended armor list. So a whole bunch of new armor. So yeah, this is pretty cool. Also, let's see this appendix here. We have vile familiars, names better not spelled out, beasts of burden, the robbers have left behind something. Yeah, just really cool little charts to add some variety to your games. Okay, next up is an interesting expansion for an expansion. And this is from Brandon Yu, aka Chocolips. We've been talking a lot lately. We mentioned him a lot lately on the channel. He's kind of a workhorse. This guy is always working on something. And he has his own YouTube channel now too, where he is doing solo Let's Plays. And this is an expansion to Solitary Defilement. And this is called Solitary Depths. Now, Brandon, I know you're going to be watching this. One thing I would love to see is if you can make the text bigger for people who print these out like me. I know you usually are using these on tablets or on computers. But I know there's room to have larger text. So I would just like to see the text maybe take up more space on the page, especially for my aging eyes. I think that would be amazing. But yeah, so this is just a whole bunch of new things that you can add to Solitary Defilement to just add some variety to the great solo supplement that is Solitary Defilement. And this says that Solitary Depths is a supplement to Solitary Defilement by Idiot, or 1d10 plus 5, which in turn is a supplement to Mork Borg, providing a set of procedures for solo play. Solitary Defilement can be downloaded for free from itch. You can also get the drive-thru-RPG version since it has the city crawl at the drive-thru-RPG version. In addition, the Ferritory supplement is recommended, particularly the Overland Travel and Eat, Pray, Kill sections. I have featured all of those things on the channel, and they are in the Mork Borg playlist that I have put together. So if you want to see more of those, I will put a link to the playlist. But here we have just some a nice random word generator, 2 D100 charts there. We have a nice little oracles, kind of an expanded oracles section. Here we have an expanded threat rating, so you can add a threat rating to an adventure to make it more or less dangerous as a way to kind of keep the tension up on a solo player game, on a solo RPG. We have different consequences for different types of hits. Traps. This trap section is really cool. We have D8 regular traps and D4 special traps. Enemy combat modifiers. So if you want to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of your combat, you can use these different combat modifiers. He also has a really interesting and useful enemy stat generator and rare monster generator to roll up some random enemies that you might want to fight or meet. So yeah, this is pretty cool. I made this book. I bought it from Itch, and I just printed this out and made my own little zine out of it, because I don't think there is or ever will be a Solitary Depths physical edition. Okay, so next up we have the Bork Morgue issue 666. Actually, this is the one and only issue of Bork Morgue so far. But this is an unofficial zine for a dying world with words and design by Grayson Yant and art mostly by dead people. I love how they always say that, because a lot of the art is in public domain that they use, and it's old art. So they just say art by dead people. And I picked this up not from Exalted Funeral. I know it's available at Exalted Funeral, but I actually picked this up at a local game store who has started carrying a few Mork Borg zines, and I'm really appreciative of that. So in the inside cover here, we have D66 surprises, looking for almost anything else. When looking for almost anything else, we'll do pink as 10s here. So 33. What do we find? Overwhelming smell of urine and a femur. Nice. Let's do one more here. 21. Strange lanterns and flame. Its flame changes to the color of the carrier's eyes. Okay, that's kind of cool. So this is a pretty interesting little supplement. It has some additional rules, but it also has some house rules that the designer, Grayson Yant, has come up with. And so you could use those in your game if you want. So this is that Bork Morgue is an unofficial zine for a dying world to be used with Mork Borg. Of course, many of the ideas within can easily be converted to other OSR-ish and NSR-ish systems. OSR being, old school rules, old school Renaissance, or an NSR, new school. I like the term NSR better because I don't really think of Mork Borg as being OSR. It's very new. It's very modern. It's very rules light and straightforward and stripped down. And to me, that is kind of the opposite of OSR, which can be really crunchy. And I think the reason why Mork Borg is often considered OSR-ish is just because it's so deadly. So this issue will be 666 just because that sounds cool. Will there be more issues? To be fair, using the number of the beast for this one doesn't leave too much room for later issues. I like that. But one of the things I really like in this is an article that he writes on dice. So the first thing we have is a little cult. And this is kind of a little standalone adventure that you can run, a little dungeon crawl. But then we have here was effing with the dice. And he goes into a little article about using 2d10 instead of a d20 for your rolls in Mork Borg. And I do like that. I like using 2 dice and summing the totals because it gives you more of a bell curve. And he talks about some of the advantages and disadvantages of using 2d10, not using a d100, but actually just summing the totals. So that would be a 16. And using that in place of a d20. And also, so when you do advantage and disadvantage, you can add a d10 and take 3d10 and then take the 2 highest for advantage or the 2 lowest for disadvantage. So he just goes into some of the mathematics and the philosophy behind using 2d10 rather than a d20. We have here another article or a article about some more weapons that you can use, an extended armory there, so more armor, scars and other ways to break. So this is kind of an extended chart on ways to take more damage. We have a dental manuscript, so a little article here written about dental procedures in Mork Borg. I would not want to go under any kind of dental procedures there. Cultists of dying gods, methods of torture and the psyche's limits on an island of dying gods. So yeah, just all kinds of cool stuff. I think this little book is pretty interesting. I love this D12-ish curses for weapons, 8 liches, and D12-ish odd oddities. Crawling death below the dying fortress, compatible with Mork Borg. This is from Creature Curation. And this is an ever-shifting dungeon using the Mork Borg system. We have 48 pages, 4 adventure hooks, 10 rumors, 3 factions, NPCs, 5 relics, 12 creatures, 6 traps, and 4 infections. And this is a pretty cool little adventure. So this is a random dungeon generator. What is known? Do you dare enter the dying forest where your own kin have been engulfed and swallowed alive? As early as you could speak, you called it the Forest of the Dead. And this shows you how to generate the Forest of the Dead using a kind of a D66 roll, but I think you do a D6 and a D10 to determine which section of the dungeon comes up next. Here we have some adventure hooks that you can use while traveling, maybe some rumors, and then we get into the dungeon itself. And the dungeon itself is separated into rooms and corridors. There is also a deck of cards that you can use. Here it is. Alternatively, you could use Atmar's cardography below the Forest of the Dead. And so that would be, I believe, cards with these dungeon rooms on there. We just have standard dungeon corridors and rooms, large open areas, pulsing tunnels, and you will have rules for each one of these with little encounters in each one. And this is very handy for the soloist because you could easily roll up a pretty interesting random dungeon and get a lot of use out of this one book here. This is the bestiary here, the Mouth of Abyssal. This is a giant kind of living cavern. There's a lot of these giant living cavern type creatures in the Mork Borg universe. And we'll take a look at another supplement in just a few minutes that has another one of those. Actually, it has 2 or 3 of them. So Abyssal is older than the pages of any bound book in the lands, far more ancient than the corporeal husk it inhabits today. Even at 0 HP, Abyssal will not truly die. Abyssal is kind of the main evil in this book here. We have some new relics, and then we get into our bestiary. So yeah, this is a pretty interesting book. I have enjoyed reading it, and I think it will be useful in generating interesting random dungeons for your solo games. Next up, we have what is probably my favorite Mork Borg supplement so far, and that is Fisk Borg or Fish Borg. I'm not sure if it's spelled Fisk, but I'm not sure if it's pronounced fish or fisk. But basically, this is brutal fishing in an accursed world. Yes, this entire supplement full of rules about fishing for nasty creatures in Mork Borg. It's like a hunting supplement for fishing in Mork Borg, and this is absolutely incredible. I love this. It's written and edited and designed by Richard Kelly with artwork by Adam Vass. Now, one complaint I have about this book, this is the printed version from Drive-Thru RPG, and I am not very happy with the way it printed. The gutters are incredibly narrow, making it very hard to read any text that is close to the gutter. I think maybe my book might have been misprinted because, as you can see, there is quite a bit of space at the edge of the page. It's almost like they printed the image too far in. But I might try to buy another copy because narrow gutters are one of my biggest pet peeves when it does come to books. But this supplement is amazing. It is so cool. So we have an entire book dedicated to fishing for weird fish, and you have different kinds of rods you can get, different kinds of bait. There's a new class that's called the Wearies, the Weary Angler, I think it's called, and hirelings that you can hire for solo fishers if you want to go out and fish solo. So we have establishing a tether between predator and prey, fish combat, bloody and forbidden fishing practices, rods, cursed and tormented, miserable fetid wriggling bait, benighted mires to plumb for riches, D66 worthless specimens, D20 wretches that fly, swim, or crawl, D12 damned leviathans, D10 salt-stained scrolls. Here we have the new class, the Weary Angler, hirelings for solo fishers, fishing excursion, gifts for Grendel. So that's an adventure if you want to go off on a fishing adventure, and alternate fishing rules. An empty, fetid, and crumbling well, a cold wind across dead grasses, nothing living for miles, nothing living except a shape, hunched, cloaked, indeterminate species, maybe a little more than a corpse that has forgotten its own death. Even so, it leans over the wretched mouth of the well, feeding a single line down into the dark. An eternity passes, no sun rises. Suddenly, there is tension on the line and a splash. The figure smiles. So even in this decrepit, hellish world, there are people out there who just live to fish. That is awesome. Now, why would anyone fish in this setting? You mean other than to fill the howling emptiness in your guts? Powerful objects lie forgotten at the base of ancient pools. Terrible balms and squirming poisons can be drawn out of the depths of moldering waste heaps. Also, it helps pass the time. Even scum need to pass the time. So we have our combat. Combat is a little bit different when you are facing off a fish. You want to do a grimly stand firm so the fish is struggling to get away, and you want to stand firm with your rod. And then other people around the fishing spot can then take turns to bash the fish and help you pull it up. And if you fail to do that in a certain amount of time, you face the consequences of that fish, and some of them are quite deadly. Here we also have some different practices such as gambits, setting the hook, rotating fishers, or chumming the waters. Here we have all of our rods. And so you can start the game when you create a character. You can start with a cursed and tormented rod rather than a weapon. So if you want to just start off with fishing, or you could roll up a rod here, a D20 rod, and you could go on a quest for what your rod would be. I think that would be pretty cool. Here we have a section about bait. And then here we have all of the different places that we can fish, ranging from a pond, a trash heap, a cemetery, a fly-bloated behemoth, an ocean, a crumbling ruin, a fathomless abyss, or you can fish in the rotting body of a god. And depending on where you fish, you will have a better chance of catching or fighting greater and greater fish, greater and greater aquatic monsters. We start with the D66 worthless specimens. And these are all kinds of just weird little fish that are super creative. This is such a creative bestiary. I love this one here. If you were to roll a 16, you have a leaden gray ball of the soul, the sum of a person's earthly presence, done, colored, and extracted through the mouth. So it has a subdual HP of 12. So you need to get that down to 0 to catch this fish. It has a stand firm, a DR ability of 6 with an agility. So your difficulty roll would be a 6, and you would test your agility. So if you had an agility of +2, you could roll that, and you would roll a 9. Okay, so you would have done some damage to that fish during this time. When struck, so if other people are helping you and they're striking the fish, it causes a sound like a hollow bell to ring, and everyone in the vicinity suffers 1 damage. Armor provides no protection against this. If you fail to bring the subdual HP of 12 down to 0 before 5 rounds of fish combat, then you would face the consequences. And it ascends into the sky, dragging the rod and potentially the fisher along with it. It does not stop ascending and will reach the abandoned heavens in D6 days' time. That is so cool. You could totally use this as a hook for a potential adventure in the abandoned heavens. You could go out and say, okay, I'm going to try to hunt a leaden gray ball of the soul and find one in a pond and then see where it takes you. If you are able to subdue it and pull it out and catch the leaden gray ball of the soul, then you get a reward. If swallowed, it gives you a second soul. What the heck does that mean? Who knows? But yeah, that is really cool. I love this bestiary. It is awesome. So after the worthless wretches here, we get into the some more powerful fish, and that is D20 wretches that fly, swim, or crawl. So these are fish, these are beings, things that are a little more powerful. And then after those, we get into the D12 damned leviathans. And these are the big guys. These are kind of like the big fish bosses that you want to face off against. And again, just a super, super cool bestiary that has all kinds of creative uses of different abilities. We have 10 salt-stained scrolls. So these are kind of fishing-themed scrolls that you can use, spells. Here we have our weary angler. And this is the new class. So a sense of chronic tedium has seized your soul. There is no cure for it that you know. All activities are equally unbearable. So you have found there is no difference between the slow chore of monitoring a fishing rod and anything else in your life. So if you want to just start off your games as a fisherman, this is it right here. And then here we have the Drowned Crew. And this is a D6 collection of hirelings that can help you on your solo fishing endeavors. And then we have an adventure here for a gift for Grendel, and this is a pretty in-depth adventure. So just an amazing supplement. I love this supplement so much, and it's well written, it's entertaining just to read, and it also has a great bestiary of weird things that you can add to your games of Mork Borg. Okay, finally, I know this is a pretty long episode here, but we have the Masticator Gate along with the corresponding Endless Demon deck. These two things are used in tandem. You can use these separate. You can use anything separate, but if you want to get the most out of this expansion, you should get the Endless Demon deck as well. I bought both of these from Drive-Thru RPG. As far as I am aware of all of the Mork Borg things I have read, this seems to be the most kind of in-depth adventure / campaign setting. It's not linear, but it is highly plotted. There's a lot of scripted things that happen, such as there are points in this adventure where the GM is told that characters should get better, should level up at certain points. The different omens, for those of you unaware, in Mork Borg, while you are playing, there is a real sense of an apocalyptic feeling. And at certain points, you will roll dice, and depending on what you roll, these omens will occur. These omens will happen. And when the 7th omen triggers, that triggers the end of the world. And so in this adventure, the omens are spread out at certain points, and the end of the adventure happens when the book tells you to have your 7th omen, and then something very crazy happens. So it's a very kind of scripted adventure, but it is not linear. But I think this is a really cool book. I'm not sure how much use I'll get out of it as an adventure for solo play, but as a book just to read, I have enjoyed it. The Endless Demon deck will be super useful to solo play. And I think what this can add for the soloist is just a whole bunch of creative ideas of how to maybe create a more involved campaign using Mork Borg, using the rules in Mork Borg, and how to handle a more involved campaign in Mork Borg. But basically what you're doing is you are starting here in Bleak Mill, which is a city, and you need to head out to what are basically 3 different dungeons. And you're trying to solve this mystery of this blood cult that is going on. And the 3 main areas that you will be traveling to throughout this hex map are the Blood Borg, the Burnt Harvest, and the Hell Within. And the majority of this book details those areas. We also have the Endless Demon deck, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a minute. But at certain points in the book, it will ask you to draw a card from the Endless Demon deck and put that on the book to complete one of the creatures. So we have the starting area here, and then we have the first area that we can possibly travel to, and that is Blood Borg. And that's kind of a map here with 9 or so different detailed areas that you can explore in that area, in that hex. And then we get into the Burnt Harvest, which is kind of an overland crawl with some various encounters and a dungeon crawl through this giant tower that's shaped like a hand. And then we here have the Hell Within, which is kind of an urban adventure, and it takes place in this small little city here, and it has more kind of urban intrigue with different NPCs who might die as a result of things happening. And then the main enemy here is this Masticator Gate, which is again this kind of giant living maw of a being that swallows existence, and then you have to survive a series of tests as you pass through the Masticator Gate. And if you come out the other end intact, that resets the omens back to 1 or back to 0. So it's a way to kind of save the world of Mork Borg, which is really interesting. So here we have a new class, the Gate Spawn Cherub. And the book, this adventure, does recommend that one of the PCs be this class, or it should be a very important NPC. And here we have the bestiary here. So we have like a Blood Gorger Tick, Burning Beasts. Man, those guys are cool. Captive Souls, various cultists, a Fetid Hand, Infernal Undead, Inferno Slime, Inquisitors, Penumbral Scum. They attack you with verbal abuse. That's super cool. I love those guys. A Phantasmal Maze. And a lot of these beasts in this bestiary, a lot of these monsters are actually familiars or companions to the demons that you can create using the Endless Demon deck. Same as these artifacts here, most of these are going to be weapons that the demons will use. So let's take a look at this Endless Demon deck to finish up this episode. The Endless Demon deck is separated into 3 smaller decks. So you have heads, you have torsos, and you have legs. And so you can create demons and monsters and things to fight using this deck by randomly shuffling up the heads, the torsos, and the legs. So let's see what kind of demon we will generate here. We have an alluring archer. Okay, an alluring archer, and she is her legs are a robe there. So she has the sensual gaze, special at the start of combat, pass a presence DR12 test, or suffer -1 to all abilities until this demon is defeated. She will have 12 HP, a morale of 10, no armor. She has a profane bow, so the profane bow is in the book, and she is joined by a companion, the Inferno Slime, and the Inferno Slime is also in the book here. That would be one demon we could face. Perhaps we are going to face the Noble Strangler, who is armed or comes with a companion of the Stitched Mime. And test strength D12 to escape from the rope that it uses to strangle. This is a bodyguard special. This demon is always accompanied by a living fortress. A living fortress would also be another enemy in the bestiary there. Perhaps we come across the Hollow-Eyed Incantor. And the Hollow-Eyed Incantor has these revenant mines, and these mines are kind of like the balls in Phantasm, and they fly out towards the enemies. The Hollowed Eye Incantor has a disturbing gaze, has 17 HP, and a vile incantation. So this is just a really, really cool way of generating random powerful enemies for you to fight. So, all right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed this long episode taking a look at the Endless Demon deck, the Masticator Gate, Fish Borg, Crawling Death, the Bork Morgue, Solitary Depths, and Suffering Extended. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.